Okay, so let's start. My name is Bettina Remmele. I'm from Steinbeis Europazentrum, which is doing the communication work for SmartEnCity project. And I welcome you all to the first lesson of the SmartEnCity Academy towards zero carbon transition. We are very happy that so many of you have already joined today. Before we start with the actual training course, let me briefly introduce our project to you. SmartEnCity is one of now 17 smart city projects funded by the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Framework Programme. In SmartEnCity, we have 3 lighthouse cities and 2 follower cities. Our lighthouse cities are Sonderborg in Denmark, Tartu in Estonia, and Vitoria-Gasteiz in Spain, as you can see on our map. Our follower cities are Rathje in Italy and Azcona in Bulgaria. Overall, we are 37 partners from 6 different countries working together on the project. We have started in February 2016 and will end next year in July 2021 after 5.5 years together. The SmartEnCity Academy that we are starting today is an online training course for cities, municipalities, and smart decision making. But of course, the Academy also addresses the scientific community and anybody else interested in the topic. The contents of this training course have been tailored to the participants' needs, and it is supposed to provide a step-by-step guidance for your own journey towards zero carbon transition. We are looking forward to have many interactive discussions with you all today and during the next 3 lessons. If you would like to learn more about the SmartEnCity Academy and our future lessons, please have a look at our website. The second lesson, focusing on governance, will take place on 14th April, so you can already mark that in your calendars if you want. In case you have any questions after the training course today, feel free to send an email to info@smartencity.eu. And then there's one last thing before we can get started. Please note that this lesson will be recorded and then uploaded to our website. By staying here, you automatically agree to this recording. Okay, so let's get started. The title of the first lesson today is The SmartEnCity Way Towards Zero Carbon City, the Cities4ZERO Strategy and Integrated Energy Planning. The lesson will be moderated by Koldo, Urrutia, Azcona. Koldo currently works as a researcher at TECNALIA Research and Innovation within the Urban Transformation Lab, and he has been with the SmartEnCity project from the beginning. He is an architect with a Master of Science in Sustainable Cities. His field of research is integrated planning, innovation in smart sustainable cities and urban environments. The main smart city projects that he is currently working on are SmartEnCity, the new project Atelier, and the European Commission's initiative, the Smart Cities Information System. Moreover, Koldo works on different urban regeneration projects within the EU and Latin America. The first lesson today will start with an introduction by Koldo to the Cities4ZERO Urban Transformation Strategy for Cities Decarbonisation. Then 3 experts from our lighthouse cities will speak about their integrated energy planning approaches. Peter Rathje from ProjectZero will speak about the Sonderborg approach. Jaanus Tamm from the Tartu city government will speak about the Tartu approach. And finally, Aitor, Albaina, Vivanco from the city of Vitoria-Gasteiz will speak about their approach. Afterwards, there will be a panel discussion with the 3 speakers, and of course, with you, the participants. Okay, so now it's time to hand over to Koldo to start the training course. Welcome, Koldo.
Thank you very much, Bettina, for your nice introduction. And thank you very much to participants for attending this webinar. In case you have some urgent comprehension questions during the presentations, please put them into the chat box, and we will try to address them right after each presentation. In terms of content, as Bettina was saying, we will try to share today some key lessons learned during this exciting project. This opening lesson is focused on the way cities can approach their transition towards a smart zero carbon city, concept that we will introduce in a few minutes through a strategic approach and integrated energy planning. So In this first lesson, as Bettina was saying, the main objective of this webinar is to invite cities to take action. And this is very important. This is why are we all engaged in this project, and we are trying to do so in our cities. This is not rocket science. It's not easy at all either, but it's doable, and proof of that is what our cities are doing through these 5 years. And we will try to show just with some hints how are we addressing this and how we are inviting cities to take action. First, as Bettina was presenting, we will show a bit of theory, and we will show like the first stage, the strategic stage of Cities4ZERO strategy. Then after that, the theoretical content, we will jump into a bit of reality with experiences of Sonderborg, Tartu and Vitoria, and then a bit of discussion. And we hope you join us actively in our roundtable discussion. So just to give a bit of context on this problem, our fossil fuels path dependency is, of course, generating a global impact. We can feel in our skins unforeseen climate change consequences. This is growing, its impact day to day, we can see that. And greenhouse gas emissions are beating all records. It's just very visual. This graph just try to see the whole picture and how we are just getting out of the box. Of course, this path dependency on fossil fuels also has a huge local impact, and is generating unacceptable levels of urban pollution. Just a couple of quotes to exemplify this problem in local urban environments. The WHO is stating that 92% of population lives in areas where air pollution exceeds what they consider as healthy limits. And the European Society of Cardiology last year stated that air pollution is causing around 800,000 extra deaths a year, premature deaths in Europe, and 8.8 million worldwide. So, I mean, it's a significant number. So, of course, we have to take seriously. But what do we do about it? I mean, we have a problem, but we cannot take the whole picture. And what we are trying to do in this project is trying to focus on cities. What can we do at municipal level? And first, from the proposal phase, we as a team try to bring an overarching concept that guides us through the more concrete and specific actions, but something that we have to always have in mind when planning our actions. And this concept is the following. Smart Zero Carbon City is a resource-efficient urban environment where carbon footprint is eliminated. This is the main goal we have when planning our actions. And this is mainly done the following way. Energy demand is kept to a minimum, energy supply is entirely renewable and clean, and resources are intelligently managed, incorporating citizens, public, private stakeholders. It's a very transversal approach. And theory is very nice, but which is our practical approach to this? And that's what we are trying to do in our main motto in SmartEnCity, to put these 5 cities into action. Some of them were already given great steps towards carbon neutrality. And we are trying to adapt this Cities4ZERO strategy to diverse local contexts, because of course the local environment is always unique and you have to be adaptive to each of those. So we developed the Cities4ZERO strategy for this journey, this urban journey in this transitioning process, and we developed this methodology divided on 3 stages. First, the strategic stage, and we will delve a bit more in this stage today, is the strategic stage at city level, where we draft and develop all the plans, strategic plans, and identify the key projects to implement in order to be successful in this transition, and also be aware to create a good environment to develop all these activities in the local context. Once we have the strategies and actions identified, we jump to design each of those projects in the second stage, which is the design stage at project level, where we try to carefully define it, incorporating tools, trying to engage all the citizens and participants for each project, searching finance for it. I mean, we have a quite thorough process, and then we jump into the final stage, which is intervention and assessment stage, where we intervene and implement all those actions. We assess their performance, and with that validation process, we try to scale up those initiatives to other parts of the city or to other cities, and that feedback is taken as an input to reassess our strategic stage. So we are in a circular process, iterative process towards carbon neutrality, which is ideally being updated every 5th year. But as I was saying, we will focus today on this first stage, how to start the engine, how to start moving into action. And this is on the strategic stage at city level. And this is mainly done in this approach and in these 5 cities, which all 5 are trying to do so. So these 6 brief steps is not as simple as it seems here, but I will try to make a brief summary. First, what we try to do is to engage key local stakeholders and try to create a local group stable in time that is dealing with this mid and long-term process towards carbon neutrality in our cities. Then after we have this stable group, it can be ideally within the municipality, but also taking other key stakeholders. We make an X-ray of our city, we analyze our city, and we are aware of the situation of our city. Once we have that analysis, that X-ray, we go to the doctor and ask for a city diagnosis. And this diagnosis must reveal all our weaknesses, strengths, opportunities, threats, etc. So we are able to take those strengths and try to limit those weaknesses in order to fulfill our carbon neutrality objective. Once we have all that, we try to generate a shared vision among all key local stakeholders, generating scenarios for 2025, 2030, 2040, depending on the ambition of the city. And with that generated vision shared with local stakeholders, we step up into the planning phase. And what we in generic terms, what we do is a strategic plan and an action plan, but in the project, we are very much focused on decarbonization and energy. So we call it, and we take the format of integrated energy planning and an action plan. This action plan is, of course, identifying key projects towards carbon neutrality or improving our objectives. And what we try to do in the last step of this stage at city level is try to integrate all that input into municipal planning, competences, departments, ongoing strategies, all that. And this is carefully done by this local group that we've created, or if it was existing, modified in our first step. So what I will do now is just go briefly step by step, so you had some hints on each of those. Of course, this is not a linear process from 1 to 6. Sometimes reality is a bit more messy than this, and probably you have some of the steps and maybe partially or completely developed in your cities, but it's just to take the whole picture. So first, what we try is to engage, as I was saying, the key local stakeholders of your city and try to set up a group, a stable group that is dealing with these planning tasks to the mid-long term towards decarbonization. Here, the profiles of urban planning and energy planning are very important, as they are crucial in this, But of course, the richer the grouper, the expertise of the group is, the better. And it's also nice to create a governance model from the beginning in order to so this steering group can act in the time and involve different kind of stakeholders in your city, such as city government, industry, academia, citizenship representatives, and it may be the possibility in your city, and probably if it's a small city that you don't have an energy and decarbonization group within your municipality, maybe you have to create one, or maybe you can modify some structures within your municipality so you can address this. Once we have this stable group, as I was saying before, we try to gather all the city information necessary for this process. We create what we call a city background information package with the main information of your city. Probably there is some existing literature review at city level with existing documents and strategies. You can also perform interviews with experts, surveys, but the main goal here is to have a city characterization, which is bringing into papers from socioeconomic variables, business environment, policies, regulations, and also an analysis on the main contributing CO2 sectors of the city, which can be energy, building stock, mobility, and also some others that can have some incidents on it, like ICTs, engagement, waste, water, etc. So with all that, we have like a narrative of all those sectors, and also a calculated CO2 emissions baseline, which will be like the quantitative baseline for all our calculations, objectives, projections in the future, etc. And with all that information, what we try to do is to assess how are we doing. Like in a checkup assessment, let's say that you go to the doctor and assess how are we, if we feel good or not. For this, it's very important to involve the sectorial experts of your city in each of the topics I was mentioning, because it's key that you involve them through the process. They are the experts on each of these sectors, so they will be of great help identifying the problems and the strengths of your city. For this, there are more complex methods of diagnosis, but we identified the SWOT analysis as not very much consuming tool, but enough representative from reality. And this is also supported by external driving forces of change, talking like city trends, for example, that can be converted into opportunities and threats, external opportunities and threats to our city that can affect our process. Let's say that sometimes we cannot control in the city all the variables, and we are very much affected by national, international, global trends, and that's what we have to take into account as well. And for that, as I was saying before, it's in the analysis, it's very important to model with software, with actual numbers, all this. So we have some inputs, how do we generate this energy, all the distribution, renewables, fossil fuels, all the demands, also considering user behavior. So we have an accurate picture of the energy system of our city and the emissions each of these boxes are generating. Here we were using, for example, in some of the project cities energy plan from our university, or energy balance from Plan Energy, the Danish consultancy. In other cities we've used LEAP, which is another kind of software. I mean, we have to find a good software, but it's important to have this baseline on your city. And with all that in mind, we have this stable group in first step, and we have in steps 2 and 3 all this information we need to start drafting a plan. So the 4th step is the envisioning step. And here we will involve the local community, local experts from the municipality, knowledge and institutions like university, industry, etc. Let's make this this group as wide as possible, so then the implementation will be more transversal. And we will try to generate different scenarios based on those calculations and based on people's input in these workshops. We will celebrate, we've celebrated a couple of workshops in each city, and we've generated several scenarios for 2030, for example, in some cities, just asking how making our city carbon neutral, let's say, for 2030, or how can we go in our process by that date. And we involve those working groups in the generation of different scenarios for that year, 2030. Just making an example. With all those inputs, we generate 3, 4, 5 scenarios. We are considering a matrix of 2 by 2, so we generate 4 scenarios. We try to reach a consensus between the participants about which would be the scenario they would like for their city in the year 2030, and we try to develop a preferred vision, taking the main elements we want to use from those scenarios. And then we jump into the strategic planning phase, and then we will see some examples of the cities we have in our project. But what we do is we take that vision generated with that consensus between local stakeholders, and we try to generate strategic objectives with that, mainline strategic lines and axes, and falling behind those lines, we try to identify the key projects that will help us to fulfill all those objectives and the vision that we've stated in this step. And for that, an indicator system, of course, it will be very much valuable. And also identifying how those specific actions can contribute into the energy and decarbonization modeling software to reduce our carbon footprint in our city. And finally, after having our strategic plan and an action plan, which, for example, in the case of SmartEnCity cities, we've called it an integrated energy plan. We have to integrate all those outputs from that plan into an input for a new way of working into the municipality. And it's very important in order to be successful with those actions that we ensure legal viability and land use provision, for example, for that kind of actions. That we made some adjustments, if possible, in local legislation, that we are aware of our municipal competences, that all actions identified can be acknowledged by the departments of the municipality, breaking the sectorial silence, and also trying to foster this cross-cutting collaboration among departments in order to be all aligned in this process. And it's important that this integration work is shared and carefully steered by this steering committee we've created, steering group in step 1 of our methodology. Of course, this is much deeper than I'm explaining right now, but what you will have access to some documents we are working with. And well, this is the journey towards the Smart Zero Carbon City. The cities of our SmartEnCity project are following. We will listen today how 3 of those cities, the Lighthouse Cities, Sonderborg, Tartu and Vitoria, are trying to adapt this to their local contexts. And besides this webinar series Bettina was presenting before, you can also join our SmartEnCity network, which has been running for more than 2 years now. And you will find there, besides networking with us and other cities, you will find resources such as the city solutions the cities of the project are implementing, webinars like this one, tools, including software tools, a YouTube channel, scientific papers, a monthly news bulletin. Christina, our colleague, develops. And we keep going in this iterative learning process. We share experiences, we network with cities. We have 3 lighthouse cities, Vitoria, Sonderborg, and Tartu. We have 2 follower cities that try to learn and apply these methods, which are Azcona and Rathje. And then now we are more than 50 cities in our network, and we are still growing. So we would like, if you are coming from a city, that you join us to our SmartEnCity network, because our motto on the project says that you don't have to be a capital city to make a major difference. Trying to engage all these small and mid-sized capitals, European capitals, in this pathway towards decarbonization. And just an open question to the audience, and trying to imagine your local context. How does your journey look like? So try to set your city in mind when the speakers are going to present their experiences. So that's all on my part. I would like to ask the audience if there is any urgent question that we should address right now.
So right now there are no questions in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, you can just put your questions into the chat box either right now or later on, and then we'll address them. Right now it seems that everything is clear. Oh no, there's one actually. So somebody asks whether there will be any insights on the finances, probably during this webinar.
I think we are dealing with this in other webinars, but we can, in our roundtable discussion, we can touch the financial point of view. Maybe one of our questions can go in that way. I take note. Okay. Okay. So I think there are probably no other urgent questions, so I think we can continue. Okay. Thank you, Bettina. Well, now it's time, as I was saying before, that to see how cities are adapting this strategic approach to their local needs and contexts. And for that, I will introduce Mr. Peter Rathje, coming from Sonderborg, Denmark. Peter Rathje, he is responsible for Sonderborg's ProjectZero since 2007. And ProjectZero is a public-private partnership trying to turn Sonderborg zero carbon by 2029. His education is business, economics, and leadership, and his main responsibility is managing the ProjectZero company and the implementation of the roadmap 2025, including, and I'm quoting here, whatever is necessary for achieving the big zero, the carbon neutrality of Sonderborg. So, Peter, the floor is yours. I give you the word.
Yeah, thank you, Koldo. And I think there are still limitations. Probably my mayor would state to this license to kill. But as you also indicate, taking Sonderborg zero carbon is an important part of the identity of Sonderborg. And our, you called it journey earlier, towards zero carbon was started 2007, not inside the municipality, not by any former mayors, but by a public-private think tank. And it was accepted 100% by the city council, and new city councils continue to repeat their commitment to this journey. Even it's complex, as we already learned. A few words about Sonderborg. We are in the north of Europe. We are in Denmark. We are in the south of Denmark. And if we just click a little bit more here, you can see we are actually, I'm not on the island, but 2/3 of our territory is an island. 2/3 of our citizens, our businesses is on that island, which is well connected by many means. We have a lot of industry. We have actually the biggest industrial group in Denmark. The Danfoss company has its headquarters on the top of the island. Apart from that, the old traditional income or industry, so to say, is farming and food processing, and tourism is also very dominant here. As I mentioned, since 2007, Sonderborg have been very active looking into any ways, any method where we can improve energy efficiency and convert our sources into renewable energy sources. And therefore also the IEP, as you introduced it, Koldo, has a perfect fit. And therefore we are also part of this, you could say, European movement where we want hopefully all parties to participate. We have achieved so far approximately 1/3 of that journey since 2007, and the goal is by 2029 to achieve a zero carbon in the energy system. There are other carbon emissions from our farming, the open land, there's from imported goods, but if we just look at the energy system, the aim is to take that zero. There are challenges, and I think one big challenge, and this is what I'm going to talk about here, is how do you plan, how do you engage to remove 400,000 tons of carbon emission, building on what we learned, but also opening the eyes of the participants here in the city, the citizens, the city council members, I mean of the whole community. How do we reach out and achieve our goal? What is 1 ton of carbon? I think a lot of people here in Sonderborg kept asking for a number of years. Then we, 2 years back, manufactured a balloon. This is 10 meters in diameter, and this contains actually the volume of 1 ton of carbon. So I'm going to talk about when we started, we had 700,000 tons of carbon to get rid of, and I'm right now in the next 5-10 minutes addressing 400,000 balloons actually. So when we convert this into something which is much more visible, I think it's much easier to talk about for also our citizens and other stakeholders. We have already created this roadmap I'm going to talk about. It was a process which we started 2018, and I'm going to talk about. We are now in we call it execution. Somebody else would call it implementation phase. It's about a lot of things you need to combine, and here you can see the journey. We started with 700,000 tons of carbon. 2029 we need to be at zero. And the milestone which the roadmap 2025 is focused on is 107 to reduce with to achieve only 175,000 tons of carbon left for the remaining 4 years. When we focus on climate, I think climate change have become more visible, as you also mentioned, Koldo. But we also have integrated from the very beginning. This is also about how can we create new, we call them green jobs, and also how can we create a better life, not only for the young people shown here, but also for all citizens. So it's combining these ambitions here when we talk about this planning process here. For many years, I think for at least the initial 8 years, we focused, I wouldn't say entirely, but very much on energy efficiency. Now it's time to increase renewable energy sources. We need to do it smart. So we also, in this roadmap 2025 planning process, talked about a shift of gear, because from just focus on energy efficiency to a number of other focus areas, this is also important that everybody understands this change. Koldo, you already showed how we, in our own terminology, we segmented society into 8 segments, and we actually gave them the IEP tools, how to analyze, how to construct new programs. And if we just look at, I think, two important, there's a 35,000, this is about what we call owner-occupied housing. This is the opportunity, this is the task to be done, this is the amount of carbon which we really aim at with 5 initiatives to get that job done by 2025 to achieve a 35,000 ton reduction. And as you also can see in the right corner, lower corner here, you can see that energy from renewable sources, from 2 biogas plants, from a big wind turbine plant, from a number of big solar parks will create a lot of carbon reductions here as part of the entire plan. It has to be not only a technical transition, it has to be based on strong participation. This is the value of Sonderborg, this is the value of the city council, of the politicians. And this is not a picture from a ProjectZero get together. Unfortunately, this is a picture from a Boy Scout, but I think we know how we want this to look like, and this is definitely one of our visions to make also the energy transition something that everybody really aim at participating in. We start early, we start in kindergarten, so it's not so that we just wait and see, okay, what happens. It's about an integrated energy system. It's about smart use of energy. And in the last 10 years, you can see our landscape. This is right outside the center of Sonderborg, where the landscape is changing. In the back, you can't see because it's not on the picture, but a huge biogas plant is also being established. So this is also how our landscape, our use of land is changing. We do not believe that just creating this, which we think is the best plan. This is the 3rd time we make a plan. This is the best plan we have ever made. But we need to continue being critical and say, okay, when we execute, when we implement, when we execute, we learn. We need to check, and we need also to correct because it's along that what we call the journey here that really there are lessons to be learned. A municipality, a city council, I think has a lot of power, and traditionally we look at a municipality as an authority, but it's also a planning authority. It's also about having this shared vision among the city council members. But we actually give a lot of attention also to education, as I mentioned, education at all ages. So what are the lessons learned from this process, which ended one year back? The lessons learned is it's very much about people. It's about motivating, it's about engaging people, it's about having excited people, and people is not only the city council, it's also the more than 100 people we had on board the process, the local experts, the local stakeholders. It's about the citizens also, because we published a report on this process. And I have never seen, we did this 2 times in the past, but I have never seen citizens actually taking these reports and wanting to read them. So it's also about telling this story, this transition story, and making it live, making it Sonderborg and not just a technical story. I think that's really a major learning. We broke the process a little bit different. As I mentioned, we created these 8 working groups. We followed the recommendation with scenario creation. We had the mayor, we had the city council in the middle of this. The city council approved the process, which we never asked them to do in the past. And I think it turned out to be very powerful, because when we debriefed the city council after 6 months, you see we started in April, and in December 2018, our city council approved the entire result, even that a lot of this was outside the normal reach of the city council. I think it gives such a project a lot of power. The last part is, and I know this is something we probably have to discuss here. There have to be money associated with operating such a process. I mean, you can't expect 100 people to step into a process and then say, okay, let's see where it ends. So what we did, we gave a lot of attention to defining this, and when the content, when we knew what should happen, we already had the layout, we already could push the button for publishing this. So this well-defined structured process, this was something new to us, and it worked out very well. But the last comment here is you also need to look into where are your strengths and weaknesses. We found that we needed more technical support. We needed somebody to help us through some of these workshop discussions here. We needed somebody to help us do the energy modeling, but also communication. Don't underestimate. And I'm not saying this because I want to scare away. I just say make sure that you have sufficient resources. I would say it can be money, it can be people inside your organization, but this requires some skills that probably you don't have in your daily life. So this is the lessons learned from I think a very exciting process, which is even it's 1 year back we ended it, which still gives a lot of energy to our 8 working groups, which continue to function and no longer discuss planning, but implementation and execution and achieving each of these carbon targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your presentation. Apparently we solved the problems in time. And we can see in Sonderborg case the stable commitment through the years and involving the people. Together with this new roadmap 2025 is getting your goal closer. Let's hope this new decade brings some carbon neutrality for your city. We'll see. And let's go to the Estonian example, and Jaanus Tamm will present us the local case of Tartu. Jaanus Tamm is a project manager in the Department of Communal Services of the Tartu city government. He has the Master of Science in Economics, and his fields of research are transportation, energy efficiency, data management in the environment of smart, sustainable cities. His main projects are, besides SmartEnCity, some other EU projects with these issues, and at local context, he has been in charge, for example, of the development of public lighting in Tartu. Jaanus, the floor is yours, and then after you, we will try to come back to Peter's.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Koldo. Thank you, Bettina. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can briefly introduce what we are doing in Tartu city in regard of energy planning. And Tartu is a small city in north. We have around 100,000 inhabitants, and we are located at the Finnish Gulf, near the Finnish Gulf. First of all, I would to point out that our long-term vision and in relation to carbon emission is to have a carbon free in 2050, so carbon neutrality. It's also our national target and aim. In order to better understand where we are at the moment in our planning processes and in energy issues, I would like to show some figures. Bettina, unfortunately, my arrows.
You should just either click on the with the mouse on the screen or with the works now. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yeah. So in 2015, there was approved our current energy plan, which is a SEAP, Sustainable Energy Action Plan, and then we aimed to reduce our energy consumption by 20%, also CO2 emissions by 20%, and the rise usage of renewable energy sources by 20%. And our reference year is 2010, because we have quite good data from this year. And this plan was drafted for next years until 2020. So last year we made the next or new inventory of our emissions and energy usage, and unfortunately the numbers we see are contrary to our plans what we had into our 2015. And what was happened was that energy usage and also carbon emissions have risen. What's good, the usage of renewable energy sources is rising quite heavy. That's a good news. And then when we analyze the situation, we have seen that what's behind of these numbers and what was happened. And what we see is that the main cause or main source of increase of energy use is the private sector, and especially the service sector. And this brought us the conclusion that these are sectors for which we want to work more comprehensively in our next plan. Here you can see basically the sectors which we can influence most and which very badly. We can influence very good transportation, public services, and cooperation. In some extent also heating system, but quite weakly in private sector, and also private buildings and electricity production sector. And these are fields on what we must concentrate in our next plan. And what's maybe the main conclusion from this analysis is that the key element is engagement. How to engage more efficiently public sector to achieve our aims on the city level. It's not easy thing, but we need to find better solutions, some innovative solutions to solve this problem or this weakness what we have. So in last year we started to draft our new energy plan, long-term energy plan, and this plan is this combined methodology of sustainable energy and climate action plan methodology, and also methodology from the SmartEnCity project. And in general, we have in our new plan 6 pillars. 3 of them are like vertical pillars and 3 horizontal. We are concentrating in our plan on 3 main issues. This is energy efficiency in buildings and transportation, on broader usage of renewable energy sources, and also climate adaptation issues. And then the horizontal pillars, which are through all these topics, is of course engagement. It's most important. Then of course smart and innovative economy, new solutions, IT solutions, and also what we consider is that the municipal sector must be always some kind of example for private sector. And by now we have worked out our common vision for next planning period. It's from 2020 to 2030 and beyond. And our common vision in Tartu is that Tartu is a smart community with smart energy and green pioneer. And we hope very much that we can inspire this our community and also our private companies. Our main aim this is to reduce energy consumption and also CO2 emissions by 2030 by 40% in relation to 2010. It's for us very ambitious plan, because as in previous slides, our energy consumption was rising during last 5 years, and it's not easy task to reduce energy consumption so much, but we do our best, and of course the main thing what we want to do in this new plan is our engagement. Our new plan is have 6 main domains. This is governance, buildings, transportation, energy, climate, and data management. And what is, in our opinion, and very important when we plan our next decade is monitoring. We see that without the proper monitoring and proper data management, it's very hard to keep alive this energy planning processes in the city, and in that sense it's very important to find good and understandable and clear indicators, and to have proper monitoring scheme. And what we are doing in Tartu at the moment, we want to automate as much as possible indicator monitoring process, and gather as much as possible different data from different energy users, and also from municipal sector and also from private sector. And we hope very much that during the period we can hear the level where most of data is gathered automatically. And as I previously also said, that we have combined two different methodologies in our energy planning and our setup. And what's good in SmartEnCity methodology, what we used first time in our planning, it's a very clear, very well working methodology, and it's a very understandable on different stakeholders and different parties in this process. And I suggest everyone to take a close look at this methodology and also to use this methodology in your long-term planning process. And by now we are in the situation so we expect to submit our new energy plan in next March or at latest in April this year. And after that also to bring some most elements of this energy plan to our city master plan as well, and also to city development plan. And maybe finally, what I wanted to point out, there are, in my opinion, 4 essential things what must be fulfilled in long-term energy planning. Out of what this is very hard or maybe rather impossible to achieve aims and goals. It's first of all common vision. Must be clear, understandable, and accepted by all parties in this planning process. It's very essential to have a clear and tangible goals and measures which are understandable for all correlated stakeholders and the community. What we experienced in last periods at data collection and data management is one of key elements to have proper planning and also proper monitoring, and of course engagement. Engagement is maybe the most important of all. Rise of awareness and also engagement of especially public entities, public companies, who have a key role in this process, in my opinion. So it's shortly all what I wanted to point out in terms of energy planning in Tartu. If you have any questions, I can.
Well, I can see apparently right now there are no questions, so maybe we can jump with the questions later in the roundtable discussion. Thank you very much, Jaanus, for sharing your experience in Tartu. It's very interesting the way you connect our strategic thinking in SmartEnCity to the idea of developing your new CCAP. Actually, I've been directly involved in Vitoria-Gasteiz process, where they have a similar approach on that. But it will be Mr. Aitor Albaina who will tell us more details about their local experience. So, welcome, Aitor. Aitor is an environmental technician at the Environmental Studies Center of Vitoria-Gasteiz City Council. He has a PhD in ecology, and his fields of research are sustainability, urban ecology, and biodiversity. And the main projects he's involved in are related to sustainable mobility, where Vitoria is an outstanding example, and also other projects regarding climate change mitigation and adaptation. And we should stress Intensify project and Urban Clima 2050 that just started last month. So, Aitor, the floor is yours, and I will give you.
Thank you very much, Koldo. Do you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Koldo. Thanks a lot for the nice introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I will start shortly. Let's see if it's working. Okay. So, Vitoria-Gasteiz, the capital city of the Basque Country, for those of you that doesn't know, aims to be carbon neutral by 2050. Which saves sustainable and affordable energy services for all, but also climate resilience and, of course, prosperous, modern, and competitive. Okay, having said that, our city already signed the Compact of Mayors back in 2008. And last week, we signed the new Compact of Mayors for climate and sustainable energy. Because of that, our objectives will be to reduce CO2 emissions by 40% in the year 2030, compared with our reference year, that is 26, and also to increase resilience. Okay. Regarding the SmartEnCity project, the integrated energy plan process that we prefer to call the city's energy transition strategy, our first milestone was the city's energy diagnosis at the beginning of last year. Besides this, in the last month, with the help of the other partners in SmartEnCity, we have developed the foresight workshop, the scenario workshops, and currently we are in the 5th step of the diagram. We are starting to prepare our city's energy transition strategy, that is the integrated energy plan in SmartEnCity words, including the action plan. Okay, this is the diagnosis, and that represents some of the efforts in the workshop last week. That's where we are now. Okay, and these are the energy diagnosis study, the main results when comparing the data from the reference year to the last year at that moment with good data, this 2015. Already we noticed that there is a slight increase on consumption, 3%, compared with the reference year, but the CO2 emissions decreased by 10%, and this is mainly because the energy mix changed with an increase of renewables energies, plus the fact that natural gas is more efficient than petrol-derived fuels regarding CO2 emissions. Okay, and you can see that there, the natural gas increased by 36% in those 10 years period. Okay. Looking at the energy balance of the city, the main energy sources of Vitoria-Gasteiz will be natural gas. Those are data from 2017, followed by electricity and petrol-derived fuels. The latter, mostly, nearly 100% for transportation. If we look at the CO2 emissions trends for the last 12 years, it seems that we are following the path to achieve the targets of the city, of the plan against climate change, that was reducing the emissions by 20% in the year 2020. We are in the path to get that, but if you take a look at the predictions regarding energy balance for 2030 in the business as usual scenario, this is practically the same, is nearly identical to the one of 2017, and this won't be enough to achieve our target at the year 2030. Not to achieve the target, the more ambitious target for the year 2050, that is reducing CO2 emissions by 80%, as set in the Basque Country climate change strategy. In this framework, or within this context, And after the diagnosis study, we organized in the framework of SmartEnCity the first scenarios workshop involving a large number of stakeholders to identify and also model 4 scenarios regarding different degrees of awareness, both the citizens and the city council, and also the fulfillment or not of the 2030 target. This process has been already explained by Koldo. I won't go into details, but I can ask questions at the end of the presentation. The next step, the second workshop, was to establish the decided scenario and to define the main actions to be developed to accomplish it. This work is currently on progress. As I can say nowadays that we expect to have the first draft of the energy transition strategy, including the action plan for the years 2021 to 2030 by the end of the summer. And after that, a participatory process with the stakeholders and also citizens will follow, and is supposed to be end by the end of the year or the beginning of 2021. But it's not only this. Vitoria-Gasteiz is more ambitious and still aims to become a carbon neutral city by 2050. As you see here in this graph, the 2 main sectors with the highest energy consumption are the residential and the transport ones, where we should reduce energy demand by 37% and 82% respectively. Those objectives are quite ambitious, but are the ones we want to achieve in the near future. For that, I will present some hints regarding these 2 sectors. Regarding the former, we acknowledge the enormous potential in building refurbishment in the city. You see in the map that we have approximately 43,000 dwellings built between the 60s and the 80s, especially the ones in red there. And in the black square now, you are looking at the Coronation neighborhood, that is the pilot area of SmartEnCity in Vitoria-Gasteiz, where we are introducing retrofitting of more than 300 dwellings, and also combined with the installation of a district heating network, nearly the first experience in Vitoria-Gasteiz, that will be fueled with biomass. For transport, our city recently updated its sustainable urban mobility and public space plan. I always stress out the public space part here, because it's not only mobility, it's also public space. It's all related. And it's sharing the motto with the previous version, that is the one you have in your screen, is giving back the public space to the people. For that, we want to discourage the private vehicle use, whilst we are at the same time improving public transport and also promoting active mobility modes, walking and cycling. I could go more into detail in the questions you want about the process in our SAMP, but the important thing is that we have already, following this approach, we have already reduced the private vehicle share corresponding to an increase in active mobility modes. You see bicycle and pedestrian modal ways in respectively yellow and green in the graph, while the private car use is represented by the blue line. And in fact, the main reduction so far in energy consumption in our city is the one regarding transport mobility, as you see highlighted in green in the graph below. That is the one I have shown before regarding the diagnosis. In those 10 years time, sorry, the energy consumption was reduced by 7% regarding mobility. In fact, it's the only important reduction compared to all the sectors in energy consumption. And finally, the city is also developing in parallel the climate change adaptation plan that, along with the energy transition strategy, the integrated energy plan with SmartEnCity wording, will represent the core of our city's CCAP, our city's sustainable energy and climate action plan. That is a commitment after signing the new compact of mayors. This will be the city's plan against climate change for the years 2021 to 2030. And this is all what I have to say. I will be happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aitor. Great news from Vitoria-Gasteiz and really promising energy transition this new decade, building up on your already remarkable effort on sustainable mobility and green infrastructure fields. Let's see which is the evolution of the green capital next years. We are looking forward. I'm not sure if there are any questions to be solved right now by the audience, Bettina?
Yes, there are some questions. Just 1 second. So one question is whether we have considered the embedded energy burdens in building construction and waste disposal. That was one question.
Well, I think this question depends on the case and whether each city has included that in their calculations. But I'm sure that at least the models we are using, it's including that. I'm not sure if any of the speakers can say something about that.
I answered in the chat, Koldo. I don't think we are estimating that. I guess it's difficult, but should be included. But I also mentioned, for example, the life cycle analysis of the electric vehicles. It's not only the energy they are consuming, but also the production of the vehicles, the disposal of the batteries, this kind of stuff. They should be modeled, but I guess they're more complex. It's work for the modelers, yes, to be done, yeah. But it's needed, yes.
Maybe we can just jump into our roundtable discussion, if it's okay with you, because this was the last presentation. And thank you to our city representatives describing their plans for next years in their pathway towards carbon neutrality. I think now, as I say, it's time to start our roundtable discussion. And I would like to ask the audience to continue writing their questions on the chat box so my colleagues Bettina and Merit can take note and bring them to the debate in a few minutes. In the meanwhile, we will break the ice with some questions to our city representatives regarding their strategic planning processes. And I think maybe we can start with the question of financing that one of our participants was bringing to the table. I think it's a very pragmatic but very important issue. What about the money? How do we pay all this? Maybe we can start with you, Peter.
When we remember in Sonderborg, the journey started with a public-private initiative. It was a think tank who created this, and they presented it to the city council. And the response back in 2007 was, great idea, but actually the city council or the municipality lacked money. But because it came from the private sector, there was the local utility company said, okay, here's some money. We had also from a local business foundation money, and we have had since we started. We fundraised from a national fund, actually a lot of money for creating our first roadmap and master plan. And I would say today, even sometime you think there's no money. I think the world is full of money. Look at when we see water all over our city or cities or societies. I mean, the message is kill it, get it, fix it, and spend all the necessary money. I think we just need to have everybody understand, unless we do what we have been talking about now for almost 1.5 hours, we are going to end up paying more money to solve these adaptation challenges. I think the EU is also a way to get money. I know in Brussels, I had a colleague joining a discussion yesterday. There's a new program, a new funding program, where the message was any city interested in taking further steps from CEAP or CCAP can apply for 60,000 euro funding, not covering a lot of activities, but for the initial step here. So I think it's just look up and look for the money. And I think I mentioned that our city council municipality did not pay. initially, but now they are paying because they see a lot of value in what is going on in this transition. So of course they are part of also financing. So I think it needs to be a combination of sources. And my statement would be there's always money. The world is full of money. We just need to grab them.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Peter. What about you, Aitor?
Yes, well, I have some ideas here regarding the regular funds. It's a matter of priority, that's for sure. But apart from that, the city council, for example, can support prosumers, you know, these citizens producing and consuming their own energy, promoting cooperatives, for example. Regarding retrofitting, there are examples of creating one-stop shop agencies to facilitate the retrofitting works, and also exploring financial instruments like paying the works through the taxes associated to the houses, like in the Europace project. And apart from that, for example, regarding mobility, another nice idea that other cities in Europe are using is to use parking revenues to fund sustainable mobility measures.
I'm not sure if Jaanus, you want to add something on that, or maybe we can jump to other question.
I want to just add that quite many things and measures don't need so much money as it was think, and rather that is important to raise awareness and to show maybe good examples and good things what's done in other cities, and I think it's not so big problem usually that it seems.
Mm-hmm. Just continuing with you, Jaanus, you made a lot of stress in your presentation on engaging key local stakeholders and citizens in this process. Do you find added value for the process when engaging a local community in Tartu? What do they give to the process?
I think the engagement of communities is essential, because without this community and without private sectors, it's not possible to achieve targets. It is sure. It's one thing, and another thing is when you come to a process of drafting of energy plan. I think community have quite often very good ideas and very different and interesting experiences from their own, and they are usually replicated everywhere, and I think in that sense it's very important, and it's essential engage community and also companies. Yes.
Yeah, maybe we should get more used to ask the people and implement also bottom-up procedures rather than just top-down, let's say.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, I think it is good to give some initiative to community, and they are willing to do more than you expect, I think.
One question I would like to ask you, Aitor, for example, in Vitoria, when you get started with your climate actions, probably there was not that much awareness in your city. How did you start with that?
Well, at the end, the main element, I wasn't in the city council at that moment, but I mean, always the main element here will be to set up this group of stakeholders, technicians, and also citizens, to start working on that, to start sharing a vision. In Vitoria, we had the lack of having a very progressive thinking mayor for 25 years, and he was the one promoting this kind of policies, looking for sustainability. That was the origin, for example, of our institution. So it's trying to get these people on board. If you don't have the luck to have this kind of mayor, at least from the city council, you can start creating groups of technicians and citizens to start developing a vision regarding sustainability, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe Peter can elaborate a bit more on the political statement of all this. Let's say that when turning ambition into action, as Aitor says in the very beginning, it depends a bit on the politicians and the commitment they have in that moment. But how important is political commitment to the plan? How to get stable political commitment to start and keep this process going over time, over 13 years already in Sonderborg?
My background is the private sector. My background is coming from industry. So I have been spending these many years understanding the public sector, the local politics, and my understanding and learning is it needs to give value to the city. So it needs to be part of the city council ambition. It has been in Sonderborg since 2007, but it's not okay just to say, okay, it was approved 2007 and then do nothing. I mean, every day the people working with the climate change and the programs that I'm representing here, we need to be innovative together with citizens, together with especially businesses. We have seen companies, all sizes. I mentioned the biggest industrial company. We have the headquarters in our territory, and we see the businesses, the companies. We see the clubs, the social clubs, sports club. There need to be strong ownership outside the city council, and therefore the city council say, okay, this is something which is really bringing value. Participation is a strong value, I think, for a city council, because this movement, having everybody on board, I think this is important for any mayor. This is important for any city council. You could say in many municipalities it starts with a municipal building, or there's a new kindergarten to be built. Let's build this in a high or very energy efficient, or let's build it with solar panels or small wind turbine. I mean, these cases can start any place. It's just important that we do not just rest and say, okay, now we have one. We need to go full scale. I think the message, Koldo, you also showed, and this is much more visible today than it was 12, 13 years back. We have a climate challenge. We need to act. Everybody knows, the city council knows that there's a climate crisis, and this is no longer for fun or just for technology reason. And everybody ideally should be on board, and everybody is not only the businesses, it's also the citizens living in all kind of different owned apartment or their own houses, rich people, poor people. This, I think, is important for any city council, and you need to start somewhere. And I think that brings me back to the city council. If they have not already started, they need to take some ownership for some municipal buildings. They need to start telling stories. They need to help society organize this. We have in Sonderborg 32 rural area committees. Majority of them are working with what can people living outside the urban area, what can they do with their homes and their life to contribute here. I mean, it is very important that we see a political leadership, and we have such leadership in Sonderborg, but it's not generated by itself. It's also the project, the transition needs to document. It's worth supporting politically.
Yeah, it's a very nice case, the one you have in Sonderborg. I think this is quite interesting, but it's also time to welcome to the audience. Maybe Bettina, there are some questions coming from the chat box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was one question about examples of best practices by Vitoria-Gasteiz. So Aitor has already kind of answered this question by posting a couple of links that we have forwarded to the chat box. So people can already find some information about Vitoria's best practices within the chat box. And then there was another question that asked, what is so special about this, about our SmartEnCity IEP methodology, and what distinguishes it from other similar methodologies?
Yeah, maybe any of the participants want a hint on that? Because of course, I mean, from the planning side, we are trying to propose alternative methods, but maybe you considered there is some added value in your local experiences?
Well, for us in Vitoria, the participation in SmartEnCity has been really important, and in other European projects, because this has mobilized not only funds, but also technicians and politicians to start working on this. By law, in the Basque Country, we have to prepare a SICAP, but without this, the support of this project, that will be in a much slower pace and with less of knowledge from external technicians or organizations. So for us, it's really a lucky thing to have this process being carried out in the framework of SmartEnCity.
Mm-hmm. I guess we're learning by doing, but for sure the participation of the local community with this method is much higher. And also what we try to address mainly, and I think we've touched this in several questions before, is the commitment you get from society, not just municipality, but trying to engage all layers of society, from citizens to politicians, private sector, academy. All of them, they can provide some input for the transition, some ideas, as Jaanus was saying before. I mean, we have to ask people, and then when we get all the key relevant stakeholders in one table, and they feel free and relevant, so they have a say to propose what they think, you really get surprised. And also, what is more important, we see that if you engage these key local stakeholders from the beginning, from the conception and generation of the plan, is much more efficient and successful in the mid-long term, because most of them, they will be somehow sectorially involved in developing and implementing the actions, identifying the plans. And it's much better to have those people on board than just having a top-down directive from the municipality that is addressing you have to do this and that. And we've seen many cases where that doesn't happen. So that's why we talk about shared commitment. I'm not sure if Jaanus or Peter want to add on this.
Yeah, I would like to comment. I think the stakeholder approach is engaging the relevant stakeholders. We did this segmented approach, so looking at private-owned household or house association, that each of these segments have their own stakeholders, and I think the IP approach represents a very strong concept focused on this. Another important topic I would like to highlight is, as I mentioned, ProjectZero started outside the municipality. Somebody had a good idea, and we needed to create the attention of the city council. So we constantly, because a lot of us are not born in the municipal system, I think especially the sixth step which you explained here, how do you take that plan and get it integrated into the urban plan, have been very important. And that's also when I showed the circular 8 steps, I highlighted it in Sonderborg. It started with talking to the city council. Do you agree we should make this roadmap 2025? And during the 8 months creation time, we also had, of course, a lot of municipal experts from the planning, from various departments involved to secure that it had a fit and it would be implemented into the municipal integrated urban plan, which it has been here after 1 year. A new integrated urban plan was approved in December 2019 by the City Council, and we realized that all our ambitious measures about territory, about use of territory for especially solar panels, having the 2 biogas plants in that plan have all been accepted. So I think it is, as you also mentioned, Koldo, it is a holistic framework which have documented to work in a number of cases, and which I think we all hope that will inspire much more cities, both inside the SmartEnCity, but also network, but also across Europe, to use that methodology.
Thank you, Peter. I think also, Bettina, there was a question for Jaanus regarding Tartu.
Yeah, there's a question regarding Tartu. So the question is, what is the stage of the analysis, and are there already any concrete calculations in place that Jaanus can present or discuss?
Yeah, we have some results, of course, from last inventory. It was the meaning of this question. But in this presentation, yeah, I have not figured out any figures. But if you have a some kind of special question, or you are interested in special figures, you can tell me directly. I can provide these figures.
Maybe Bettina, can you send the Jaanus email address or something, so maybe they can get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely, we'll do that.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Thank you, Jaanus. I don't know if we have any other questions coming from the audience.
Yeah, so we have some more questions that we can ask from the chat box, but before I do that, I also want to encourage the participants once more that they can also just speak up directly. So if you have any questions, people can also unmute their microphone after the next question and just speak up themselves. So one more question that we had in the chat box that is related to Sonderborg again. So the question is, how much time did it take for the private think tank in Sonderborg to convince the local authorities to engage in combating climate change, and what was the main argument?
That's a good question. That question goes back 13 years. And I think there was a couple of meetings with the new elected mayor. And the new elected mayor, I think my own observation is you always look out for a window of opportunity. So when there's a new mayor on board, even that the energy transition should not be one single mayor's project, but when there's a shift of mayor, it's time to look for new ambitions. And this new mayor was also the first mayor of what we now call Sonderborg. It was a merger of 7 independent municipalities. So this mayor also saw the project as an opportunity to unite, to create one vision. There are 3 lighthouse projects today. ProjectZero is one of them, but he created this framework saying, okay, now we are one municipality, as we call it. But so the easy part, I remember the city council members saying, yes, go and do it. We talked about the money, as I mentioned, there wasn't a lot of money. So I think it's not just how do you convince, it's also how do you stay on top of the mind of the mayor, of the city council members. And I sometimes meet with mayors from other municipalities, neighborhood municipalities, and I very often challenge them on your top 5, dear mayor, where is climate? And if climate doesn't show up among the top 5, I think there's a huge challenge. So, I mean, it is about getting the attention here, and then for those working with the structure, with the organization, with delivering the results, and this is not just my small ProjectZero company. This is also all the stakeholders associated. This is people inside the municipal departments. This is people in private companies. I mean, we need to do our very best and work even closer together to stay on top of the mind of not only the present city council members, but also the future city council members. I think people from outside would say, okay, you have achieved almost a 40% reduction. There is no way that a future city council can conclude we don't need the ProjectZero vision any longer, because there's also a push from society, there's a push from young people in Sonderborg. I think the young people, as I mentioned, they learn about this in school, so this is another way. You always, I call it, you need to look for how can you in a positive way create a cross pressure on the city council from the citizens, from the businesses, on business, from the city council, from the employees. I mean, constantly look for, are there new ways, if national legislation or laws are changing like they did in Denmark a couple of months back, you have a new window opening. Don't rest, don't sleep. You need to use any opportunity. This is very important, and you need to secure that the city council is in the middle of this. And I think the mayor then becomes the most important, but you also always have to think mayors can change. So don't just work with the mayor, you need to work with all politicians. I hope that gave a little bit more background on this convincing. It's not about convincing. Convincing is a commitment you get in a split second, but you need that there's more than just an okay. There need to be a commitment, and during that timeline there also has been a lot of money associated here. When I talk about the money, it's not only for the planning, it's also for doing retrofit in municipal buildings. But a lot of this have paid back, so it's not so that it's just cost for the municipality. And the same for the citizens when retrofitting their buildings, the house associations, or in the companies when they start saving energy. A lot of this can be paid back with less than 3 years, and therefore it's not on the cost of the city council. What we are doing here, we just need to find the drivers, we need to find the motivation, and we need to make programs which make it easy for each of these segmented groups to participate.
Yeah, actually, I think you exemplified very well. For example, in the return of investment of some retrofitting actions in the Nordic countries may not be that good on numbers in the south of Europe, for example, but in the south they may have some more sun as well and less heating needs. So I think it's to find the good drivers, the good local drivers, to, as you said, first convince, and then after that find commitment, put the municipality on the center of this, and then try to push through the years. And it's already been 13 years, which is quite a lot, and you're still going. So congratulations on that, because I think it's a very good practice for our audience today. I'm not sure if we have more questions, Bettina. If somebody wants to step in directly.
Yeah, maybe let's see if somebody wants to ask a question directly. If so, people can just unmute themselves and directly contribute to the discussion now. Okay, somebody tried. I'll try. So somebody said that he or she would like to ask a question. I'll try to. Okay. It shows us that you are not connected to the audio. So Srinivas, if you would like to ask your question in the chat box, we can communicate it to the presenters. In the meantime, there is one more question I think related to all of you. So the question was what your thoughts are on the climate-sensitive building construction. And then we also have, so Srinivas now posed the question in the chat box. So the question is, what are the key performance indicators to judge the performance of cities?
Well, that's a big question. Actually, we have a whole work package to answer that question, but we are dealing with different kind of indicators to monitor this, both through the city level in terms of characterization of cities, sectorial characterization, and then the impact the different projects may have on the city. And then also indicators at project level. We have KPIs. We developed the baseline when we started the project, for example, and then that way we can measure which is the difference before and after all the actions. We are talking about mobility, retrofitting, ICTs, infrastructures, and we are now in the monitoring phase, so we will come that with indicators after some months, and we will publish that also on our website. But for sure, I mean, the key indicator here is energy consumption and reduction of CO2 emissions, and around that there are lots of KPIs, and we are measuring many variables. But the aggregation of those then give us some different indexes, but everything is around the decarbonization of the urban environments. I'm not sure if one of the cities want to delve a bit more on that.
I think you say everything, Koldo. I don't know if those deliverables regarding that working package are available, are publicly available or not.
Some of them they are. I mean, I would address the audience to go to our SmartEnCity website, and in the part of resources, Work Package 7 is dealing with all indicators from stage 0, where those indicators are chosen, both for the city and the project, and then how that evolves through the project. At urban and project scales, and also how that gets transferred to impacts.
There just came in another question, whether the measures are on a city level or on a district level or both.
They are both, but it depends on the city. Maybe the representatives can give some examples of what they are implementing right now in their cities. We can start by Vitoria, for example.
Koldo, I was checking the KPIs at the website, and it seems to be already published there and is available. Can you repeat the question, please?
Thank you, Aitor. Thank you for checking. They are asking us about our interventions in the project and if they are at city level or district level. And I was saying that maybe you city representatives can give some hints of what you're doing in the cities within the project.
Yeah, in Vitoria-Gasteiz, they are both at the district level. For example, regarding retrofitting, and the district, the district heating network is just at the Coronation district, at the Coronation neighborhood. But for example, the actions in mobility are for the city level, where we are implementing a smart electric bus, and apart from other minor measures, yeah, both district and city level in Vitoria.
What about Tartu?
No, basically Tartu is quite small by territory, and our actions somehow in district or in city level. But yes, we have a pilot area in the city and for SmartEnCity project, and basically all renovations and infrastructure works and activities are related to this pilot area. But the mobility issues are over the city.
So you're implementing, if I'm not wrong, a bike sharing system, a district cooling station next to the river for air conditioner. You are also retrofitting lots of housing, right, in residential?
Yeah, also district heating, which is related to this pilot area, and also biogas buses, for example.
Biogas buses. You can check out that on our website as well. Maybe Peter, can you tell us a bit of the implementations in Sonderborg?
Yes, and remember our starting point was 700,000 tons of carbon, or 700,000 of these big balloon equal to the emissions. The plan I spoke about is addressing 400,000, and of course we are very focused on each of these 8 segments. They have their own working group, and while in the last 2 hours we have been discussing here, there's been one of the working groups focused on 3,300 homes in house associations. How do we get them retrofitted to save the associated 9,000 tons of carbon? Just to give an idea, yesterday we had a meeting in the company established to facilitate the big wind turbine park. A new biogas plant is being built and will be started this summer. Half a year back, one of the biggest solar plants in Denmark was completed in Sonderborg. So each of these, you need to go back to and see my presentation. Each of these segments have their own initiatives. Basically, they each have to implement 5 important projects which they have selected. The stakeholders have been part of the creation, and that's what makes it so easy. That the mayor don't need to be involved in each and every project. It's delegated into society, and I think that's also what makes our city council very confident that this is a community project. For Sonderborg, these many balloons or carbon figures I'm talking about are territory. It's not about what the municipality as a company is doing. It's not about what the center of the municipality. We talk about the entire area and the transition of the energy system. And saying so, there are also figures which are not included here. This is the open land emission. This is emissions from methane emissions from farming. This is import of goods. I mean, we focus on the energy system, but I think also everybody in Sonderborg is confident that when we progress with this, it's much easier to take additional steps because the carbon challenge is more than the energy system. But let's just fix the energy system before we step into more complex challenges, which we now start to address also at political level, like farming.
Yeah, let's go step by step. I think that's a good tip. And if we don't start, we won't step up. So it's better to start someday.
And that's correct. I mean, Koldo, if we look back 10 years back, we did not have the LED lamp, but the LED lamp which we have today is actually a very easy first step for any shop, for any business, for any private household or house association. Just go and shift these bulbs or lamps into LED. Then you have started your private journey or your company journey or your sport facility journey. I think this is an easy way to start the journey, and for everybody, it needs to start somewhere. The biggest company I mentioned here, they have halved their heat consumption during the last 10 years. Just to say, also big companies have big opportunities of participating here, and they are not going to stop. They announced 2 weeks back in the public press that the entire Danfoss company at a global scale have the ambition to be zero carbon across the planet here by 2030. We just had to make them remember in Sonderborg they have to be zero carbon 1 year ahead, and they just confirmed this is how it is for Sonderborg, and then for the rest of the planet is 2030. So I mean, this is also showing how if you work with companies, it will benefit other cities or municipalities, because then businesses realize this is an important challenge which needs to be fixed, so to say.
Yeah, we are all connected. Yeah, exactly. I think this is a very fruitful discussion. Thank you to all participants and audience that asked your questions. I think we've all gathered interesting highlights to be applied in our local climate action contexts, but unfortunately, I think our time is already done. So we will leave the stage back to Bettina as she has some key info about next lessons. I hope you enjoyed this fruitful knowledge exchange. Thank you to the speakers, and for sure we enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you, Koldo, and of course also Peter, Jaanus, and Aitor for this very interesting panel discussion. I think we have all learned a lot, and we can all go home today with some new insights. But before we all leave, I would like to emphasize once more that this training course consists of overall 4 lessons, which will all take place within the year 2020, and this today was the first one. From the second lesson on, we will also invite external professionals from the smart city field as guest speakers. And yeah, the second lesson already takes place on 14th April at 2 p.m. again, and it will focus on the topic Mastering Governance and Political Barriers. For this panel discussion with political representatives from our cities, we have also invited Baha Kuban from Demir Energy, who is also a smart city specialist from our sister project Remo Urban, and he will join the discussion next time. As you know, with this training course, we want to address your needs and answer your questions. Therefore, we will be sending out a short feedback form after today, including 2 to 3 questions regarding your needs for the next lessons as well. The best thing, though, is that all of those that successfully attend all 4 lessons of the SmartEnCity Academy will receive a SmartEnCity certificate signed by our project coordinator. And finally, we also offer special support to anybody who feels like they would need further information or exchange, or also maybe more detailed information. If you feel like that, then just join our SmartEnCity network, and there you can benefit from many special activities. Okay, so that's it. We have reached the end of the first lesson. Thank you all very much for joining and for actively discussing with us, and make sure not to miss the next lesson on 14 April. Thank you very much again also to the speakers and Koldo. Goodbye.